Hey guys, today at Movie Time Explainer I will explain a movie about vampire, werewolf, and supernatural creatures, so let's start with liking this video and subscribing to channel. A full moon slowly wanes. We immediately cut to a crowded street in Italy. Everyone is wearing red cloaks, and Bella is forcing her way through the crowd. Suddenly, she's no longer charging through a crowd, but she's shoving branches aside as she runs through the woods to Edward's meadow. Across the clearing, she sees an old woman, and she wonders at her Gran being there. Bella suddenly realizes that she is actually looking in a mirror, and she is Gran. Edward turns to her and says, "Happy birthday, Bella." Bella wakes with a start. Charlie walks in, wishing her a happy birthday. Bella protests the presents, but his isn't wrapped. It's a camera, and the other is from her mother, a photo album. Drive to school. A radio newscaster talks about 3 missing hikers, and that rangers are searching for the killer animal. At school, Bella snaps a picture of Mike, Eric, Angela, and Jessica before Edward shows up, wishing her a happy birthday. Again she asks no one to mention it. She is obviously irritated about aging. Bella turns around and there's Jacob. They chat a bit, Jacob teasing her about her birthday and asking her to come hang out sometime. Jacob gives her a dream catcher. As they head to class, Edward asks why Jacob Black can give her a gift but he can't. Bella explains that it is because she has nothing to give in return. He replies that her life is gift enough, leading to the whole "change me to a vampire." Suddenly, Alice jumps down in front of the two with a birthday present for Bella and tells her she is going to wear it tonight. And Bella gets sort of excited about that night. Edward begins to discuss how easy it be human, how easy it is to die. He explains that for them they can just take a bit of poison, but with vampires it is much more difficult. Bella asks why he's even contemplated killing himself, and explains that when she was nearly killed at her old ballet studio, he didn't want to be in a world where she was not, so he thought about going and provoking the Volturi, a group of vampires who were the law keepers of their world. Later that night at the Collins house, he shows Bella a picture of the head Volturi, Marcus, Caius, and Aro, with Carlisle in the background. Carlisle, turns out, lived with them for a while, and we see a clip of how the Volturi take care of business, and Aro rips the head off some other vamp. Edward explains that not following their rules. The rules are simple: don't let the outside world know vampires exist. Bella is still disturbed that Edward has even contemplated this, and Edward says that the only way to hurt him is to hurt her. He promises to always protect her, except from his sister. Alice prances in and whisks Bella downstairs where there is an elegant party set up. The whole family is there, and they are all excited to be celebrating a birthday. Emmett teases Edward about dating an older woman, and the gifts abound: a necklace from Rosalie, a new stereo system for the truck from Emmett. He's already installed it, but on the third gift Bella catches her finger on the paper and gets a paper cut. Suddenly, Jasper twitches, takes a deep breath, and Edward all out throws Bella across the room, throwing her into a table and glasses to get in front of her and fight Jasper back. It takes a bit of effort, but Emmett and Carlisle hold him back as Alice tries to calm him, claiming it's just a little blood. But she suddenly smells it, and it is no longer a little. Bella is bleeding quite a bit from glass in her arms. Alice apologizes and bolts, and the rest of the family quickly follows as Carlisle commands them all to get Jasper out. Edward tries to stay, but Carlisle tells him that he is the only one that Jasper would probably listen to right now. Carlisle takes Bella into another room and removes the shards of glass from her arm, stitching it up and cleaning things up. She asks how he does it, and he says after years and years of practice. He wants to help people as much as he can now that he is damned. Like, as in hell? Bella asks. She doesn't believe he could possibly be damned, and asks if that is why Edward won't change her. Carlisle explains that Edward cares for her soul, and if roles were reversed, and you believed as he did, wouldn't you have a hard time taking someone's soul? He then burns the bloody bandages and he's been putting in rubbing alcohol. Edward takes Bella home, and there is obviously something wrong. Bella tries comforting him, saying it was bound to happen, and that it would be safer to just change her. She doesn't believe he or she will be damned. Edward still doesn't want to, and he's still upset, but Bella requests just one thing for her birthday: kiss me. Upstairs, in her room, Bella prints off several pictures from the night, including one of her and Edward, which she folds in half so as to see only him and tapes it into her album. The next day at school, the Cullen table is empty, and Bella is concerned. Edward is actually in her room, and he takes the picture of him and Bella, unfolds it, and looks at it. When Bella arrives home, he is waiting for her. He asks her to take a walk. They walk a ways into the woods, and Edward carefully breaks up with her, saying his family is leaving, she doesn't belong in his world, and eventually telling her he doesn't want her to come with them. She interprets this to mean he doesn't want her, and she doesn't seem too surprised. Edward asks her to promise not to do anything reckless, and he promises that in return she will never see him again. He kisses her forehead, then turns and leaves. She looks up and runs after him, but she can't follow him. She walks well into the night, then collapses, curls up, and falls asleep. Out of the woods comes this giant black dog. We next see Bella being carried home, held tightly against the bare chest. Sam walks up with her and Charlie runs her inside. Jacob gives Sam a funny look. Bella is next seen sitting in front of her window, and the words October, November, and December pass as her voice dictates a "Dear Alice" email, and she tries to explain what she is feeling, and how she wishes Alice were there for her to talk to, and what happened. Bella screams in her sleep now, and it terrifies Charlie. She sits alone at lunch now and doesn't eat. Charlie finally confronts Bella and tells her he's had enough. She's going to Jacksonville, where her mom and stepfather live. She says no, and tells him about plans to go shopping with Jessica and have girl time. Bella is distracted by a group of guys on bikes who whistle at her and Jessica. She has a sudden memory of any time she was in trouble, Edward would save her. Suddenly, a misty version of Edward is right in front of her. He says, "Keep walking." Jessica asks if she's okay, and Bella says she thinks she knows one of the biker guys. She walks down there, and Edward keeps appearing, telling her to go back and that she promised. She gets on the back of a bike with some random guy, telling the misty Edward that he lied, and the bike takes off. As soon as she gets scared enough, she tells the guy to stop, and the misty Edward disappears. Back at the spot where the guy originally picked her up, Jessica is furious, and Bella apologizes for being stupid. The next day, Bella drives over to Jacob's and he is really excited to see her. She explains that she has something that might be a bit stupid, but she'd like to fix up a couple of bikes. Jacob pulls the tarp off the bed of her truck to reveal two really awful looking bikes. He says he could probably fix them up. He goes to pick them up off the truck and she warns him that they are very heavy, but he easily lifts one and sets it on the ground, and she is again amazed at how buff he is. The next montage is of them hanging out and working on the bikes together, obviously spending a lot of time together. Bella eventually meets Jacob's friends Quill and Embry, who tease Jacob about Bella being his girlfriend, dating older women. Bella voices another "Dear Alice" email, talking about how Jake makes things easier for her. He is sort of filling the hole that Edward left behind, but she still has the bad dreams and wakes up screaming. On the way to finally test out the bikes, Bella quickly pulls over when she sees a group of bare-chested guys gang up on one of their own and throw him over a cliff. Jacob explains that they are just cliff diving, nothing really big. Sam and his cult just want to prove how macho they are. Bella is a little surprised to hear the cynicism, and Jacob explains that Embry has joined them, even though he used to be terrified of Sam and his gang. It really has Jacob irked, and he tells Bella about how now Sam is just eyeing him. Bella tells him he doesn't have to do anything he doesn't want to, and they drive on. They get to a little secluded spot where they can test out their bikes, and as Bella straddles her she sees Misty Edward again. He tells her not to do this, and she jumps the gun a bit and nearly runs Jacob over. She gives it another go and gets the bike going, but is going really fast. She keeps seeing flashes of Misty Edward, and isn't really concentrating. A bend in the road comes up, and Jake yells at her to brake, but she can't seem to figure it out and loses control, flying from her bike, tumbling, and slamming into a rock. Jake hops on his bike and gets to her quickly, and tells her they aren't trying this again. She protests. She feels her head, where she is indeed dripping blood, and stands up, takes his shirt off and presses the shirt to her head. A few days later at school, Bella decides to go sit with her old friends at their table, and overhears Angela talking about something she saw in the woods, a really big animal, like a bear or something. Bella believes her, and tells about the tracking her dad has been doing. Mike is thoroughly thrilled that she seems back to normal and asks her on a date to the movies, and Bella says sure, asking for a gory action movie, and proceeds to make it a group date, inviting the rest of the gang. At the theater, Jake is there, standing awkwardly with a pale green Mike, who is asking if he's even old enough to see this movie. When Bella walks up and explains that Angela has the flu and Eric is taking care of her, so it is just the three of them. Awkward looks all around. In the movie, though, Mike says he's going to vomit, and runs out of the theater. Jacob rolls his eyes, and he and Bella follow. As they are waiting for Mike, Jacob naturally takes Bella's hand, and Bella holds it for a second, but then twists out of his grasp. He asks if he can't hold her hand, and she says he can, but that it probably means something different to him than it does to her. She is afraid of making him something more than a friend, just to have him leave. He promises that he will never hurt her. Mike gets out of the bathroom, and Jacob gets onto him for being a soft guy who can't handle the guts and gore, and really gets agitated. Bella jumps up to stand between them, and Jacob admits that he doesn't feel quite right and has to go. Over the next several days, Bella calls Jake again and again, but he never returns calls, and being alone makes things difficult for Bella, and she isn't taking the separation well. One day, Charlie and Harry are going to go fishing, but Charlie offers to stay home. Bella says not to worry, and after they leave she randomly takes off for the reservation to see Jacob. She shows up at his house, and he is outside in the pouring rain, shirtless, a tattoo, and with much shorter hair. She confronts him, and asks why. If he's obviously not that sick, has he not returned her calls? He is pissed about something, and she sees Sam's gang on the edge of the woods behind his house. She asks what Sam did to him, but he says not to blame Sam. Sam is helping him, but to instead blame those filthy bloodsuckers she loves so much. This is obviously a blow to Bella, and she doesn't know what to say. She reminds him of his promise to never hurt her, and he tells her that he isn't good anymore, and that by staying away he is keeping that promise. A few days later, Bella hikes to the meadow, a voiceover of another Dear Alice going all the while talking about how she misses Jacob and Edward. She remembers the meadow as a beautiful place with lots of flowers, and especially beautiful Edward. But when she gets to the meadow, it is brown and dead. The pain of being there hits her, and she nearly collapses. When she gets up, though, Laurent is there. For a second she is excited to see him, but things quickly go south when he explains that Victoria is here, and she's a bit mad, and he's been sent to see if the Cullens were still around. The house is empty though, and she is still there. What's up with that? Suddenly, she sees Misty Edward. He tells her to lie, and she scrambles to make something up about the fact that they'll be back. Laurent sees right through it, and Misty Edward tells her to lie better. She tries, but she's not all that good. Laurent tells her he's going to kill her, and Misty Edward tells her to threaten him. She tries to say that Edward will know who did it and he'll hunt him down. Laurent laughs, says, I don't think so, and proceeds to tell her it is better this way. Victoria, mad about Edward killing her mate, wants to kill his mate, but she wants to inflict serious pain. At least his way it will be quick and painless. Bella resigns herself to this fate, says, I love you, Edward, and closes her eyes. Laurent is about to strike when he notices something. It is the giant dog. He takes off, and the wolf gives chase, quickly followed by 4 others. One pauses, and looks right at Bella, before jumping into the fray. She takes off, and she quickly gets home and tells Charlie that the animals they are hunting aren't bears, but giant wolves. He and Harry head out, but Harry gives Bella a strange look, and Charlie chastises Bella for going into the woods. That night, thoroughly terrified about Victoria being on the hunt for her, Bella wakes to tapping noises at her window. It is only Jacob throwing rocks at her window, and he gets up into her room very easily. He tries to explain what is going on without really saying anything, almost like he physically can't say anything. He reminds Bella of the story he told her at La Push the year before, but all she remembers is the bit about the cold ones. He's upset, and takes her hand, noticing the silver scars on her arm from when James bit her, but he really cannot say more, and he leaves hoping she'll figure it out. She has a dream that night, and remembers what all else he said and how the Quillet tribe is supposedly descended from wolves, and she sees a giant wolf in her dream and wakes up. The next morning she gets to Jacob's house first thing, but Billy tells her Jacob isn't there. She doesn't believe him and forces her way in and hollers for Jake while she stomps off to his room. When she opens the door he is fast asleep. It's actually kind of sweet, and she leaves him alone, but she sees the rest of the gang outside his window in the woods. She heads out to them and confronts them, accusing them of having done something to Jacob. She ticks off Paul, and slaps him, and he suddenly morphs into a massive wolf. She is obviously startled, and goes to run when Jacob comes running out of the house and toward the charging wolf and Bella. She tells him to run, but he suddenly morphs on the fly and a wolf brawl ensues. Sam tells the other 2 guys to take Bella down to Emily's, and one of them remarks how the wolf's out of the bag now. Bella is warned not to stare at Emily. Sam doesn't like it, and she comes into the house a bit unsure of herself. Emily turns around, and there are massive scars on the right side of her face. She's made muffins for the boys, and teases Bella, saying, "So you're the vampire girl." Bella responds, "So you're the wolf girl." But Emily smiles and invites her eat. Sam, Paul, and Jacob finally show up, and Jacob nods to Bella to follow him. They head down to the beach, and Bella is upset because she thinks Jacob is killing people. He is upset because she is willing to let vampires go scot-free. He explains that they don't kill people, and that the only reason they, the werewolves, are there is because of vampires. They live to hunt them. He tells her about how they killed Laurent, and that they are trying to catch the red-headed vamp, but she's been pretty evasive so far. She keeps coming back though, and Bella explains it is because Victoria is hunting her. She spends the rest of the day with the pack, and Jacob takes her home, assuring her that her house is being watched. The next day, Bella voices another "Dear Alice," explaining how she doesn't see Edward anymore, but that she knows how to, and what she's got to do. Charlie and Harry are in the woods tracking, when Harry finds a huge paw print and scuffs it out. Look carefully in the trees behind him and you'll spot Victoria's flaming red hair. Charlie keeps walking, when all of a sudden Victoria is right behind Harry. She picks him up by the neck, and she looks ready for the kill, when a wolf appears out of nowhere and knocks her over. A fantastic chase scene between wolves and vamp ensues. All the while we cut back to Bella, who is running through the woods trying to get to the cliffs. Charlie turns around, and Harry is dying. The wolves chase Victoria to a cliff where she runs off the edge and dives into the water. The wolves can't follow, and decide on another route. At that same moment, Bella is standing on the edge of the cliff, and Misty Edward is telling her not to do this. She tears off her jacket, and then jumps in the water. She is a little exhilarated, smiling at the thrill, when a wave behind her knocks her under the water. She keeps getting knocked back under by wave after wave, and finally, just as she sees Victoria swimming towards her, she knocks her head against the cliff and she sinks. As she floats down, the most clearly defined Misty Edward appears, and she looks to him before someone grabs her arm and pulls her up. Jacob tells Bella to breath, and starts to administer CPR, when she finally coughs and looks around. He asks what the hell she was thinking, but Sam shows up and tells him to get her home. He's off the Harrys. Bella asks what happened to Harry, and he explains that he had a heart attack. Harry is dead. On the drive home, Jacob tells the freezing Bella to sit closer to him. He runs a temp of 108 now, and she warms up. They again have the conversation of why they can't be closer. He saw what Edward did to her, etc. And they are awful close when she thanks him for being her friend. He goes to open her door when he realizes that there is a vampire in her house. She sees Carlisle's car and knows it is okay. She gets in the house, turns on the light, and Alice is standing next to her completely bewildered. Alice asks how she is still alive. She jumped off a cliff. Bella explains the cliff diving, and what she's been up to lately. Alice asks what the awful wet dog smell is, and Bella explains that it is probably Jacob. He's a werewolf. Alice says they aren't good company, and Jacob says look who's talking. Alice realizes she can't see his pack of mutts, so when Bella is around them her future disappears, too. Jake insults Alice, and Bella tells Jake Alice is welcome to stay as long as she likes, and Bella is reluctant to give them. They are about to kiss when the phone rings, and Jake answers. He gets really tense and explains that Charlie isn't home. He's preparing a funeral. We see Edward on some balcony in South America crushing his phone, obviously falling apart. Next, Alice comes into the kitchen explaining that Edward is going to kill himself now. Rosalie told him what Alice had seen, Bella jumping off the cliff, apparently a suicide attempt. Now he wants to kill himself, and Alice and Bella have to go save him. Jacob begs Bella to stay, but Bella leaves. Bella and Alice make it to Voltura in a car Alice stole. Alice explains that it is St. Mark's Day, and the city is celebrating the eviction of vampires from the city. Edward plans to step into the sunlight at noon, provoking the Volturi since they have already said they don't want to kill him. It will be enough to get him killed. They drive madly through the streets, trying to get around all the people in red cloaks, until they are stopped by cops and Bella jumps out and runs for the city square. The clock strikes 12, and she sees Edward stepping into the sun. She runs across a fountain and slams into him. He says, "Heaven," thinking he has died, but Bella convinces him to step back, that she is alive, and that he needs to get out of the sun. They do, and she expects him to leave again, no longer feeling guilty about what he thinks he made her do. He says he will never leave. Suddenly, two cloaked vamps show up and say that Arrow needs a word, and they enter a huge hall where Arrow is excited because Bella is alive, and he takes Edward's hand. His power is reading all thoughts you've ever had, but only through touching the person. Edward was reluctant to touch him, but he had no choice. Arrow is fascinated that Bella is the only exception to his gift, and asks if he could give it a try, and takes Bella's hand. Nothing happens, so he is curious and asks Jane to give it a shot. Edward tries to defend Bella, but Jane takes him down with a look, and the single word pain. When Arrow finally gets Jane to try her gift on Bella, Jane's smirk disappears and she's upset that she has no effect on Bella. Arrow is fascinated, but because Edward is determined to keep Bella alive, he must kill her. Edward gets in a huge fight, nearly getting killed, when Bella says to please kill her, not Edward. Arrow is amazed, and is about to take her up on the offer when Alice jumps up and says that Bella will be changed, even if she has to do it. She's seen a vision, and she gives her hand to Arrow. Arrow sees Edward running through the woods, and then Bella joining him, sparkling in the sun with the same amber eyes the rest of the Cullens have. He's more than delighted, and there will be a follow-up visit to make sure Bella is changed. Alice, Edward, and Bella quickly leave. Bella wakes screaming in her room, but Edward is there to comfort her. Charlie comes in. Edward warned Bella and hid, and tells her she's not allowed to just up and leave like that. She's grounded. She's okay with that. When he leaves, Edward says there are ways to evade the Volturi, and she won't be changed. She won't have any of it, and heads up to the Cullens' place to put it to a vote. Everyone is more than happy to vote yes for her except Rosalie, who votes no because she wishes someone had been there to vote no for her. Edward is very upset, but is resigned to this fate. As Edward drives her home, Bella agrees to wait until after graduation for Charlie's sake, and that she'd really rather Edward be the one to change her. As they round a bend, they almost run into Jacob, who wants to talk to Edward. Jake reminds Edward of the treaty terms. The vamps can't bite a human. If they do, the treaty is null and void, and the wolves will attack. Bella is furious and says she's the one choosing it. This upsets Jacob, and she asks him not to make her choose, because if he does she will choose Edward. He's upset, and Edward promises never to leave her, thanking Jacob for taking care of her when he didn't. Words pass, and a fight ensues. Jacob morphs, and Edward is ready to go at it when Bella runs between the two of them and tells them they can't fight with her there. Jacob runs off. Edward turns to Bella and says to please give him some time before changing, maybe 5 years. She rejects that, saying it is too long. He asks for 3. She says no. He says he has only one condition then, marry me. She is shocked.